confirm that the meeting has been posted? Very good. Please start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. First thing I'd like to bring up is we have a couple of modifications we need to make to the agenda. One of the things, since this is the first meeting after the election, typically that's when we elect the new school board officers. That's not on the agenda, so I'd like to add that as new business and move to that right now. So if I could get some motions in that area. So,
I'd like to make a motion that we re-nominate Kurt Weber as chair of the board.
Second.
do we want to, we'll go office or position
Oh,
by
I'd be
position?
happy to do the, well, actually, what I'd like to do, if it's all right,
Right.
I'd like to move on the slate of officers to continue as they were this past year. Kurt is chair, Derek is vice chair, and Ray is considered secretary.
Second. Second. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, very good. Next, moving into old business, I'd also like to make a slight change there. We have the petition warrant article from the last election listed as old business for the last topic of discussion. I'd like to move that forward, and I'd like to make a comment that the purposes of this meeting, as we said 2 weeks ago, was to discuss kneecap results. That's what this meeting's for. That's what we're going to do. The only reason the warrant article was put on the agenda was so that I could bring a proposal to the school board that we could agree upon, and then we're going to move on. Basically, my proposal is that I think we need to produce a press release, hopefully by the end of this week, to clarify the actual events of 1998 and 1999, when we broke off from SAB 30, and clarify our position on that, issue a press release, hopefully by the end of this week, so that people have a chance to look at this, and then we'll talk about, we'll put a discussion of the petition warrant article on the agenda for our next board meeting on April 4th. So that's my proposal, and I wanted to make sure that I had agreement from the rest of the board to do that. Okay, I'm seeing people nodding their head. Okay, I don't want to distract from the primary purpose of this meeting, which was to discuss the kneecap results. Okay? So I think I see consensus, okay? And so again, that's it for the discussion of the petition warrant article. And now I'd like to move on and discuss. And there will, one other change to the agenda. There will be, it's not on the agenda, there will be time for public comment at the end of the meeting after we've discussed the other items on the agenda, the kneecap stories and the class ratios. Everybody okay with that? Okay, so I guess we can start with the kneecap report. Paul, are you going to lead this?
Let me introduce a person that needs no introduction, Sandy McDonald. Sandy, would you, Sandy is our curriculum director. Sandy, would you kindly introduce the people who have worked with you to present this information, please?
Tonight we have some teachers with us. The purpose of the meeting, we discussed last time, was to not necessarily listen to a presentation, but to go over the information, clarify any misconceptions, anything that needed to be clarified, and then have a chance for teachers to talk about how they used it in their classroom. So tonight we have Kate Fox from Guilford Middle School, and Dick Dume from Guilford High School, Katie Bryant from Guilford Elementary School, Abby Ashola from Guilford Middle School, and Lori Hant from Guilford Elementary and Middle. So what I'd like to do is we have all the reports that we've given to you. open here, and I would just like to offer you a chance to ask any questions. I'd like to be able to pull that report up so that we can look at the slide and the information that you're talking about at the same time. So, who would like to go first?
Also, Sandy, I might add that the three principals obviously.
Oh,
are
of
here
course,
as well.
right.
To,
Ken, Guilford High School, Marcia from Guilford Middle School, and Jack from Guilford Elementary. And they are also, will be answering any questions that you have of them, happily. All right. Where would you like to start? Questions on any particular reports?
Well, I was gonna say, I think the question that was asked by Derek, and I'm sorry it's not here this evening, was how does the staff take the data from the kneecaps and then analyze it, and then utilize it when you're teaching your students? You can just kind of give us an idea in the 3 different grade levels, how that works in each level.
Well, we start with when we get the results. We break them down by strand, tested strand, by grade level, and by subgroup. And we summarize that information, and then we send it off to each school that it is applicable to. Lori would be the first person to handle the math data from the 3 through 8th grade. So do you want to
Yes,
share a
so
little bit?
essentially what I would do is, in the fall, for instance, I would take the kneecap fall data that we have, and that would be from the previous teaching year, and the NEWA data, and I put those together and we look at it by strand, which is numbers and operations, geometry, functions and algebra, excuse me, and data stats and probability. And we pull that together, and I can look at it by student. And with that information, I can meet with the teachers, especially in the middle school. We have our vertical curriculum team of the math teachers. And we look at that data, and we analyze it, and they see it, and we eventually use it to target instruction. We form groups, maybe small groups for students that might be struggling with in numbers and operations. And in the course of the year in instruction, we know who those students are, and we can target instruction from that perspective, and then assess and see their progress and so on. So that's essentially what we do. When we use those 2 data points, it's really important to use more than just the kneecap. We use NEWA, and we pull that information together. And we can see it from previous years as well, and look at trends and patterns and score results.
One of the things that the classroom teachers will do, especially in the area of math, over the summer when they're looking to plan their instruction, or even right after the kneecap results are released, because it's nearly a year old, so they're really planning for next year. They'll ask for a breakdown of where students are, numbers and operations, where are they in data, where are they in geometry, so that when they're planning out their instruction, they can beef up where they need to beef up and back down where they can afford to back down, so that they can target the other areas.
Are they doing this both on a group basis and on an individual basis?
For students or for?
Are they looking for, particular areas that the students in general are struggling with?
Both, actually.
And then
In
also
general,
looking
and
for.
definitely individually, sure.
Right.
We'll pull student growth reports, and then we track those growth reports over the years, so we can see, do we have a student that just this year didn't meet their growth target? Or is this a student that hasn't met growth targets for 3 years? If it is this year, then it's really important that we look at not just this one piece of information, because this just represents one day. And anything could have been happening on that day. If that flags us and we look at the student, and then we look back at their NWEA, or look at their Success Maker, look at their Study Island or their ALEX scores, and we see that the student is starting to struggle, that's when we can intervene right away. Or we might see that, this student is outstanding, you talk to the teacher, everything is just fantastic, and you can surmise that that student probably had a pretty bad day that day. Could have been a number of things.
Real quick, when you say you would intervene with that student, is that take the student out of the classroom, have some discussion with them, or give them some individualized instruction, some things to boost?
Well, the first thing that we would do, if it was math, I would talk with Lori, and then we would talk to the classroom teacher and see where the student is struggling, and then any number of interventions could be offered at that point.
It could be a number of different things. It could be extra help, targeted instruction for that individual. It could be using Alex as a software math program, because that's individualized, and they can go in and they can work on what they're having trouble with, what they're struggling with, a number of different interventions.
Katie, can you maybe talk a little bit about Success Maker and how that works for intervention?
And I can speak specifically to the elementary school, and our PLCs are grade level PLCs. So as a group, we are looking at the general population of the entire grade level, but then also specifically with students that we want to work on specifically. Being from the 4th grade, I can tell you how this year with the results that we've received from the most recent testing that happened in the fall. In the past, we've looked to see how our students in 5th grade tested, but where this year we've already made so many positive changes to our curriculum and the way that we are teaching students. We've decided this year to focus on the kids that we have currently in 4th grade, and we're using Success Maker, which is a program that I'm sure Jack has shared a little bit with you about, where our students are regularly working on this computer program, working on specific skills, and then we as staff get a printout regularly of how they're progressing with those skills at their specific level. So a child that may be below the grade level is working at their level on skills, but a child that may be above grade level is working on them at that level. So what we've decided as a 4th grade PLC is to create a course within Success Maker that will assess the students on the specific items that they were tested on the most recent kneecaps. So we have their scores from the kneecaps in the fall, but then we're going to give them this as well to see the progress that they've made so far this year. That way we can take the rest of the year to target any specific pieces that we want to. And we're really looking at this to target our level 1 and level 2 students, so the students that were below proficiency levels. And we think this would be a great way for us to target those specific skills and then come in place with some intervention pieces, which could be specifically more time with Success Maker on targeted skills, specific skills instruction, which could be during our normal flex times or at another time within the day, or other programs that we have, whether it be Title I or any other forms of reading recovery pieces. So we're really looking forward to trying this out and seeing if it will work, because we think it's going to be that much more specific to the students.
And I'd like to add that information will be invaluable for the incoming 5th graders in 4th grade, so that the teachers can look at that and see where the students are and start formulating plans and instruction based on that ongoing information that they've collected this year.
And we'll be doing this for both math. We're going to start with actually reading, and then we'll do in something similar for math. We have a lot in place right now within our grade level for intervention with math, so we decided to start with the reading and then go forward with the math.
So you're let's see if I got this right. So you're looking at since you're dealing with 4th graders, you're looking at the test they took at the beginning of this year, which actually measures their competence in 3rd grade.
Exactly. For this year we are, because what we've done in the past is usually we've looked at those students that were tested in 5th grade and their scores and looked at our entire instruction. But where this year we've changed the approach in how we instruct. We've gone with flex groups where students are not working in a general group, but more specific skill-oriented groups. It makes more sense for us to focus on those students right now, because we're not going to know the fruits of this year's labors until they're tested again in the fall.
But you will still be looking at,
Yes,
what areas the last group of new
certainly.
1st graders
Right.
were weak in, to make sure that this new group of 5th graders next year will have gotten
And I apologize,
focused
I
areas.
wasn't clear. This is in addition to that.
Right.
Sorry.
Okay.
And the other thing is when the teachers are looking at the students that are L1 and L2, they're not just looking at that. We're a small school, they know these students, and they know how they've been performing on the Success Maker. So they might have a student that was an L2 by 1 point or 2 points. That student might be far beyond those skills that they were tested on in September and have moved on to more advanced 4th grade material. And they might not have. So there's a real personalization factor for every child in this district, because we're small and we have a staff that's able to do that. It's a little bit of a different ballgame when you get to the high school because we don't test in 9th and 10th grade. So really they're using the kneecaps for programmatic changes. And Dick, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. The first thing we do is take a look at the scores, and we match the scores and look at how the students performed on the test. Generally, we actually order them in ascending order to see which students underachieved, which students might have not put their best effort forward when they took the test. This year we surmised that 10 students probably were in that category. Once we do that, we start looking at the different strands and looking at how our students did on specific questions within the strands. And then matching those against the curriculum. For instance, this year there was a question with scatter plot, and they weren't asked to write a best fit line, which our students can generally do. This year they're asked to interpret the data in a different way, and our students did not do well with that. So the first question that came to the table was, do we do this kind of thing in our math classes? We don't. This is something we need to address and add. So what we've done over the last 3 years is essentially taken this look at our curriculum and try to adjust the curriculum so that we see growth in our student performance. And we've seen growth in our performance. 3 years ago, 28% of our students performed at L3, L4. Last year was 39%, this year it's 44%. So we're seeing some improvement. Changes we make take 3 years for us to see the results of sometimes. Because a change we make to the freshmen, we won't see until the spring of the student's junior year. Some of the changes we've made is implemented in Algebra Foundations class. We could tell that when students did pre-algebra their freshman year, Algebra 1 their sophomore year, they never saw geometry. And then they took a test that had 40% of the questions with geometry. So we eliminated pre-algebra and have every student now taking algebra in the 9th grade. So those are the kinds of programmatic changes we've made in our curriculum to try to address some of the shortcomings. We look at the test. It's a hard test. You know, Ken had mentioned in his to us that it is a college.
It's a college-ready test.
College-ready test for math.
Given in the fall of the junior year.
Instead of the senior year or freshman of students transitioning into college. It's a difficult test. And to expect that every student would be proficient on this test is a bit of a stretch for us. In our Algebra Foundations class, for instance, right now, we're teaching systems of equations, how two lines intersect, and our students understand the underlying concepts. The functions and algebra portion we do well with. But when we try to solve equations, we get into trouble with numeric operations, which is an area where we hurt. Last year, Mahesh Sharma was here. We shared the data that we had with Mahesh, and he came up with some strategies for us to help us to start, and we implemented those changes this year with our freshmen, so that at the beginning of the year, we spent a lot of time reviewing fractions, looking at fractions in a different way, and all of those pieces that will help our students be a little bit more successful. The jury's still out on what will happen with that. I know we made another change, and that is we're requiring all freshmen to take a year-long algebra now. So we continue to make changes based on these results, and that's how we have to look at them.
Another thing that I just wanted to point out, in using the results from, actually, Lori, why don't you do that?
Yes, when we look at students that are going from 8th grade to 9th grade, especially with the Algebra 1 students, obviously they need to meet a certain criteria, and because of placement, they can go into honors geometry, they can go into Algebra 1 honors, they can take algebra, and so forth. So what we do is we use the NECAP data and the NEWA data, and they have to meet, for instance, in NECAP, they need to, for honors geometry, they have to be L4 in functions and algebra and numbers and operations. So we look at those proficiency levels for both NECAP, NEWA, and their grade levels and so forth. So that's another way we use the NECAP data. They need to be at a certain proficiency level to be placed in certain courses at the high school, right?
Two other
Grade
things.
going into 9th grade.
Two other things I would add. One of the things we've discovered is that If a student took honors their freshman year and dropped back down a level, if any student touched an honors class, they scored a 3 or a 4 on that test, they were proficient. 3 students who did not partake in honors were proficient or advanced. The rest were either at levels 1 and 2. The other thing we're looking at right now is that we have a number of students who don't pass Algebra 1 their freshman year. They repeat it their sophomore year. Now we're back to that same problem. They don't see geometry before they take the test, at least high school geometry. So we're looking at that now to see what we're going to do about it. That's one of the things we're doing in our due days, is working on that.
And when those changes happen at the high school level, they filter all the way down to kindergarten. And that doesn't happen just overnight. It takes some meeting time, it takes some changes to curriculum. And then again, when those changes do take place, even if, they might take a couple months for us to adjust curriculum down to accommodate for the next year, you don't see the results of that for another couple of years sometimes, so.
This is a question, I don't know if it's for Ken or for Dick, but, one of the concerns whenever you start talking about standardized testing is, whether or not the kids are being taught to test. And they're just learning the test, and I guess my question is how closely do the material that's covered on the kneecaps correspond to the grade level expectations and the different state mandated competencies that we've got?
There are no state mandated competencies. We'll get to where some, but there aren't.
I thought you were using, to develop your competencies, you were using.
We're using the grade span expectations.
Okay, fine.
And that's one of the things that Dick alluded to, is we're constantly looking at where we fall down to see is that, because we know that test questions come from the grade span expectations. So if we fall down in a particular area, a particular strand, we go back and check our curriculum and make sure that we align with those, so that our next group of kids will have a better shot at that.
So you're not typically going to see things popping up on the kneecaps that are not part of the GSEs?
No, I think they're very, the test and the standards are very close together.
The problem is that some of those standards are not generally taught to underclassmen in any school district. But yet,
In math especially.
yes, so there are 11th and 12th grade standards that are being given to essentially 10th grade students.
And shifting, like, for example, when we looked at the reading scores this year, because when we first started taking the test, we came out of the initial testing with a very high L3, L4 in reading, and we've kind of very slowly slid a little bit, and we're looking at things like, is there a certain part of the population that is suddenly not doing as well as it was, and we're finding our socioeconomic students, our poor, low socioeconomic students, took a big hit this year. They went in the opposite direction. We're also seeing, when we look at the data of the strands, that our weakest area is analysis and interpretation of literature, which gives us a target. It's also the same target that the NEASC report gave us. The NEASC report told us that we needed to promote and foster more higher level thinking in all classes. And so that just bears that out. That is something that we need to do when students read anything. We need to start analyzing and interpreting themselves. So we unlike, because we don't test every year, we get this one shot, we use it a great deal to modify our curriculum and scope and sequence.
Why is kneecap given beginning of the junior year as opposed to beginning of the senior year?
That's the federal legislation. A test this difficult probably should have waited at least 1 year. But every state or group of states is using a different test. When you go back to the original legislation, they didn't mandate a test, they only mandated testing.
And then after the summer students in the secondary, in response to what Ken just said, is by getting into the beginning of the junior year, you're measuring minimal competencies for high school graduation. The thought was that if you waited to the beginning of the senior year, it wouldn't give you sufficient time to remediate mistakes that were missing.
Why not give it more than once?
think that's a money question, really. The test is expensive.
And different high schools approach their mathematics instruction differently. Guilford does an Algebra 1 geometry, Algebra 2 sequence. Many schools do an integrated math approach where they do 3 years and integrate geometry with their algebras. So, and then you run into the, you know, the deal of students moving from one district to another and all the mayhem that is caused with that. The other thing that we're dealing with is the core curriculum is coming down the road. And we've been told in 3 to 4 years that our students will be tested on the core, which is even tougher from the high school perspective than what we have right now. Many of the topics that are taught in Algebra 2 are being pushed down to Algebra 1, and topics that are in pre-calculus are being moved down to Algebra 2. And that's causing some great angst for us, but we are restructuring our Algebra 1 program as we speak to match that core curriculum, because we feel the current 7th or 8th grade will be the first group of students who test with that new test when they're juniors. So a bit of concern on our part, because we know we have to raise the bar even higher. And the bar's been raised every year. The bar gets raised every year.
And I think that'll actually be a spring of sophomore year test. The new test, if it comes into place as a national test, will be a springtime sophomore year test. So that just shortens the time span for us already.
Maybe, Abby, do you want to talk to what we're doing with the core curriculum from the language arts side? You get some experience that you've had in curriculum.
Like what we're currently, in our group, what we're
Yes.
doing with?
Sure.
Sure. Yeah, right now, we're working, we have representatives from each of, 2, I guess, from each of the schools. And we're working on looking at the Common Core standards that are, state standards that are coming up that aren't totally implemented yet, but they're right there in front of us, and the test's coming, you were saying. And figuring out, what are we gonna do? Like, there's a lot there. What's the most important thing is we're meeting and discussing and coming up with all sorts of, what is non-negotiable? What do we have to do? Yeah, we're gonna do X, Y, and Z, but Y and Z have to happen. And that's kind of what we're doing right now, and meeting and discussing and meeting with our coworkers and figuring out, okay, let's figure this out one grade level at a time, what has to happen, so that by the time they get up there, they're ready for those core standards. So we're in process of making that happen now. It's a big project, we're already 12 pages in, so it'll be big.
Building the bridge between the current GLE, GSEs, and the new core, and then building the majorly important bridge from each grade level, so that as they progress up through going up their sophomore year, they will be ready. Yes.
Can we just step back to Algebra again? Algebra 1, are you moving from 2 trimesters to 3 trimesters?
3, all freshmen, I don't know if you guys stick with me, but all freshmen will take 3 trimesters of math next year, regardless of what they're taking.
And I know Dr. Shama talked about that, but what is your expectation in terms of test scores as it relates to the added time in Algebra 1? Is that going to, or will students then accelerate at that point after those 3 trimesters? Or?
We're not anticipating, there is, because of the trimesters and what the type of student that comes to the high school, we have to focus on some basic skills at times in some of the courses. What we anticipate being able to do now is spend that time and then do a couple of other units of instruction that we have not been able to do in the past because of a lack of time. And we're mandating every freshman, geometry honors, if they're a geometry honors student, they will take a year of math, and they'll take during the 3rd trimester, they will take an Algebra 1 honors, Algebra 2 honors prep class, if you will, because we know that the 8th grade algebra experience is not the same as our 9th grade algebra experience. We have 70 minutes a day, 180 days a year now, so we know we will go deeper and further. Our goal is to go deeper so there's a better understanding of the mathematics during that freshman year.
In sophomore year, though, you still have the chance that a student could take math the first 2 trimesters, or all of them,
if they wanted to accelerate, they could keep going.
Right, but it could take the first 2 trimesters, not take the 3rd trimester in between. That 3rd trimester and over the summer, basically, have a total brain dump prior to the kneecap.
One of the things we do though, Ken's been great about this, was one of our requests, that every junior was enrolled in trimester 1 math in the fall. So that meant every junior was in a math class, whether it was pre-calc honors, all the way down to Algebra 1 Algebra 2 foundations. We had every student taking math. And that's a plus, because they're thinking math. And for those, we had, I think, 1 pre-calc honors class where the students weren't running that term. They came after school with a math teacher. The math teacher actually met with those students and did a 2-day refresher. And some of those students are the ones that got to level 4. So
We also did some studies last year at, when did those students take the math? And it really wasn't so much a function of did they not have math the 3rd trimester, it was what math did they have the last time they took it. So if they had geometry honors and they finished at the end of trimester 2, they still outperformed their classmates that had not gone to that level yet.
We're also looking, as we prepare kids through the strands in grades 5 through 8, we're looking at what that fall off is between June and September. We have the data. We are looking the question about individual students. We can look at individual students and we can predict, and we can sit and have those conversations. That fueled our summer math program that we ran last year, which was different from what had been run previously, and will also, this year, is going to allow us to say to parents and to students, this is what we're recommending for your child, whether you do it at home, online, with Alex, or some other tutorial, or you do it with us in the summer program. We're recommending that you keep your child engaged in mathematics so we don't have that significant drop-off that we can actually now predict with some of our students. So that's a huge thing when it gets to what we're talking about for high school students, because we really have a different kind of data even that we're looking at and that we're using to improve that and move them just as they're trying to move more students into higher levels of performance.
And our consultation with Dr. Sharma this spring and summer was that if we could establish that foundation freshman year by going all 3 trimesters, regardless of their ability, that the gap will be minimized. The real problem is coming from kids who are unsure of their math to begin with, even down to the basic understanding of different types of numbers and things like that. So if we can build that foundation during the freshman year, and they have a gap in their sophomore year, that gap will be minimized because they have a deeper understanding of how math works and the concepts of math. That's his recommendation.
Kate does a lot of individualized math work using a number of data sources, one of them being the NWEA, and her students have shown considerable growth in using that for goal setting. Do you want to just talk briefly about what that is?
Besides just us using the data, and for using data, we read the kneecap, but by the time that we get the kneecap on the students we have, generally we know the students better than the test scores. The test scores don't generally tell us anything we don't already know with the kneecap. With the NEWA, because we give them in the fall, in the winter, in the spring, then that's different. And before we give them the NEWAs, we actually give them their test results from the previous time and have them set their own goals. And then when the score pops up at the end of the test, they know, did they meet their goal, did they not meet their goal? Some of them are so upset that they're like, I'm having a bad day, this happened at home, and can I please retake it? And that's a long test, it's like 52 questions, and of course we let them if they want to that bad. But for them, then they have that goal of their own, and I think that helps them because they have more ownership of it. The other thing that I do with my students a lot is, for the kneecap test, the kneecap release questions every year. They want you to take those questions and explain to your kids how they should be answered, what kind of things they're looking for,